Okay, I think we can get started now. Welcome everyone. Happy Friday night at Peters Valley. Welcome. Tonight is the night when our visiting instructors take turns giving 10-minute talks, a little bit about their work and themselves. It's always an inspiring evening, so you picked a good night to be here. All right. To keep the event rolling, we do not take any questions, but if you have any questions for our artists speaking tonight, I highly encourage you, please see them afterwards. And yeah, I hope it's going to be a lovely evening. We are going to get started with our fiber instructor, Jovencio de la Paz, and our artist fellow in the fiber studio, Elizabeth Kaiser, will introduce Jovencio.
Hi, everyone. Jovencio de la Paz is an artist, weaver, and educator. Their current work explores the intersecting histories of weaving and modern computers. They received an MFA in fibers from the Cranbrook Academy of Art in 2012 and a BFA with an emphasis on fiber and material studies from SAIC in 2008. Jovencio is currently an associate professor and the head of fibers at the University of Oregon in Eugene, Oregon. They have exhibited work in solo and group exhibitions both nationally and internationally, most recently at the Museum of Art and Design in New York, Cranbrook Museum of Art in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. What is this? R and Company Gallery in New York, the Halsey Institute in Charleston, South Carolina, the Museum of Craft and Folk Art in LA. In 2022, Jovencio was named United States Artist Fellowship for their contribution to the field of craft. Okay, welcome, Jovencio. We're having a great time up in fibers. Great.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's my reading skills.
That's great.
They falter a little bit.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. Thanks, everyone. I actually don't remember exactly what my slides are, so we'll work with it as it goes along. So I'm a traditionally trained weaver. I studied really ancient kinds of technology associated to weaving, primarily the loom. So I am, like many of you, very dedicated to these haptic ways of making. In the studio, working with the hand is really important to me, and always something that I come back to as sort of a guiding sort of star in my practice. But I'm also like the last generation, I think, to be not a digital native. So we didn't have a computer growing up, but technology has become such a big part of my life. And I think that I've been really invested in asking questions about how to balance my digital life and my life as a craftsperson. And I think that a lot of people probably struggle with this idea that, you know, we work with our hands and in physical ways, but we also do so much work digitally now. And what is the connection between those things? Lucky for me, there's a really strong relationship between digital technology and weaving. So this is 3 examples of binary code. On the left, the checkerboard, you know, so black, white, black, white. In the center, binary code 101010, which is what computers speak in, and then weaving. So you can see the over under of woven cloth. These are all expressions of binary code. So I work with a digital loom primarily. I am still hand weaving. I'm still standing at the loom, but I also write computer software and look at sort of the history of computer programming to create algorithms that sort of produce the patterns. So I do very little design work, so to speak, but I do a lot of work creating software that generates patterns. I'll talk a little bit more about what that process is like in a moment, but I just wanted to share also a little bit of history to contextualize what I'm talking about. So this is called a jacquard loom. It's a loom invented in the 18th century, and it uses punch cards to control very complex patterns. And so every other year, I get to bring students to this studio in Florence, Italy, where they get to actually program the cards themselves and make patterns themselves on these really special tools. It's incredible to see these machines operating. You know, the loom is widely considered the first kind of computer because of the way it can remember patterns and can do mathematical sorts of processes. But this is all analog, right? This is all mechanical kind of computation. Yeah, extraordinary craftsman. This is in in Florence, the Liceo Foundation, which continues to be one of the preeminent ateliers for silk and velvet jacquard textiles. Yeah, so we punch our own cards, we design our own patterns. It's very exciting. I'm very excited every time I go. And those get fed into the loom, and then we stand at the loom and operate these machines. So it's very physical. It's incredibly hot in Florence in the summer. We're constantly covered in mosquitoes and you're really concentrating. So this is sort of a sample of something I was working on that loom. And then, as many of you know, maybe IBM's first computers were also run using punch cards. So it's an identical technology, basically, from loom to computer. So this is like an example of a jacquard loom punch card, and then one of IBM's early punch cards, a really identical kind of technology. I won't talk about this too much, but so as I was working more and more thinking about digital technology, I was reading up a lot on sort of the development of those tools. And as a craftsperson, I always think like I'm just as interested and invested in the tools that we use as I am in the products that come from those tools. Actually, so this is a tree of like the history of computers at the bottom. ENIAC is one of the first complex computers. And you can see like, Apple is in there somewhere, IBM is in there. I also think the loom should be, right here before ENIAC. But in my research, I discovered the story, as I was researching the history of computer technology, I discovered the story, which I'm going to tell you. I'll be as brief as I can, but these are some of the first computer programmers that worked on a computer in New Jersey at the Institute for Advanced Studies. And they were working on a supercomputer to help calculate the blast yield of the nuclear bomb. So the story, those of you who've seen Oppenheimer, maybe this will ring a bell, but there was a lot of concern that the bomb would explode, and we didn't really know what the results would be. It could, as the movie talks about how it could ignite the atmosphere and be much more devastating. So the math was just too big. They couldn't do this by hand, so they employed the supercomputer to try and figure out this really incredible, like going to the moon sort of scientific problem, but it's incredibly horrific use of like our most powerful technology. And I see that you see this sort of as a rhyme, I think, with tech. Somehow it's always innovative and always exciting, but also somehow contains this threat to our basic humanity. So after they were successful, they figured out the blast yield of the bomb, they did a really good job. The US government was sort of like, we don't need the computers anymore, so scientists do what you want with it. And so they got together and were like, okay, we have the most powerful computer on the planet. What should we do? They decided to make an open call to the world. Like, what are your unsolvable problems? Come to New Jersey, we'll use the computer to figure it out. They chose a project by this person, Niels Albaricelli, who's a biologist trying to model how single-cell organisms evolve and survive disaster. And I was just like, this one computer, on the one hand, first created the most powerful destructive force our species has ever known, and then immediately was used to better understand the origins of life. And so this was like really interesting to me. This is his research paper. I don't understand all the math going on here, but basically he was programming single-cell organisms with like personalities. Some were more greedy, some were more passive, some wanted to fight, all these different personalities. And so in the Y direction, from the bottom up is generations. And you can sort of see, oh, some of the species like die off, others become very successful. And to me, this was like a textile. This was like the same way you weave also, right? You're building something line by line. So I was like, okay, I want to take this software and I want to do something with it, and decided that I would use it to grow not single-celled organisms, but weave structures. So I took his original paper with the help of some computer engineers, created the software that turned basically his software into something that could generate cloth. So this is like an example of what his software looked like, and then this is an example of a weave draft. So it's basically, I'm not doing any design work, but these organisms, these algorithms are building a cloth. And so this is what it looks like on the loom. And what was exciting is like, this idea of a ghost in the machine, that as these systems get more and more complex, very unpredictable things start happening. So there were just like colors emerging that I hadn't planned, and interactions in the thread that, so in a lot of ways, I felt like I was starting to collaborate with this creative algorithm, this sort of technology. And yeah, so this is what my work looks like now. This is just one project amongst lots of things I've been working on. And I know as I talk about it, it sounds like, oh, you just like did this in a weekend, but this this was like 3-year sort of research, lots of trial and error, it was very interesting to collaborate with computer engineers. They're craftspeople also, but in this sort of linguistic and mathematical way. And yeah, I'm really happy to answer any of your questions later on if you have them. Thank you. Not too very just of them, but oh, it's done.
Thank you so much, Jovencio. Next up in our wood studio this week, we have Beth Ireland teaching, and to introduce Beth is our wood fellow timber.
Hello. Hi, I'm Timber. Beth Ireland received her undergraduate from SUNY Buffalo and her graduate from Mass College of Art, MFA. And that really doesn't say anything. So this is my take. This is my hot take on Beth Ireland. She has been and remains one of the preeminent instructors and teachers in wood and wood turning in America today. It's kind of a big deal. And I mean, she's taught at this point generations of turners, teaches professionally at Center for Furniture Craftsmanship, does the 3-month professional wood turners program. It's just a whole heck of fun to be around. And I think why she is so successful as a teacher is that it's not about just technical skill and craft, which is totally there, obviously, but she encourages her students to find their voice and be creative in new ways. And I think that's a really powerful thing she offers. So thanks for being here. Come on up and show some stuff.
Thank you, Timber. Okay, this is going to be like speed dating in 10 minutes. I'm going to do this really quick. I'm just kind of, okay, you're going to keep track. Okay. All right. I started, I did. Oh, thank you. Okay, starting now. In my undergrad, I drew and I did woodblock prints, and it's kind of unbeknownst, I wasn't thinking about it till lately, but over 40 years, it's totally influenced my woodworking. I illustrated books and magazines when I moved to Boston, and I did it by cutting wood blocks and printing, and then they were printed in newspapers and magazines. And I realized I like cutting the wood more than actually printing. And so I taught myself how to make furniture, and I developed a company that I've had since 1982, making furniture and architectural parts. In the mid-'80s, I learned to do wood turning, and it totally psyched me out, and I was so excited about it because it's a place where I could kind of explore color, line, texture. And I did it for years and ended up with this product, which is objects cast in epoxy resin and turned. And it kind of put me on the map and teaching all over. And 3 years into it, I lost my sense of smell from working with the epoxy, which I've never gotten back. And so I went into a crisis. Oh no, this is what I'm known for. What am I going to do? And so it sent me off on an exploration of how could I still get color and line in woodworking without using toxic chemicals. So in the upper right-hand corner is kind of a box. This is the kind of box we might be thinking about and working on this week, and the bottom and underneath that on the right. This is how I've made my living. I have a gigantic lathe and I am a woodworker. So it puts me in a place between kind of carpentry and craft. So it allows me to construct objects. So I've made my living making giant columns, carving architectural parts for people's houses. And it's provided me with a ton of material to play with and feel free to make whatever I want without worrying about the expense. In 2007, kind of one of my hardest jobs, I, on the upper left, had to build this handrail that went up 4 stories. And it was bent laminated in place and hand carved. And it made me come kind of full circle and make me realize that what it really was a drawn line in space. And it took me back to printmaking and drawing and got me interested in that. So in 2007, I went to, or 2008, I went to Mass College of Art and Design to get my grad degree in sculpture. And in the lower right is a installation in Provincetown of a historic nautical theme that I did with fellow artist Jen Muller. That propelled me into grad school. So in grad school, I was very interested in structures and in tiny spaces, carving. This is some of my thesis work. And my thesis work ended up here. And this show is called Self-Portrait, and it's about how I learned as a kid in a community to create things. And in the middle of this piece is that big white thing is actually a exact replica of a Chevy Express cargo van. And I built it because while I was in grad school, I thought, where am I going to go from here now? Like all of a sudden I'm out of the studio and into the world. So I, in my second year of grad school, developed an idea that I would travel around the country in a van, teaching as many people as I could in 1 year how to make a single object in wood. So I had no van, so I went and measured cargo vans, and I built this skeleton of a van and put it on the floor and figured out how would I live in it? What would it be like? And then I put it up on these. It's the only piece in my show not on wheels because it hasn't happened yet. I graduated, bought a van, turned it into a living space with the back opened up and became a studio with a lathe that pulled out and tools. With the help of my friend Jen Muller, I built a website that people could follow me and ask me to come, and I would teach anybody in the country for free if it was within 50 miles of my path. So this lasted a year. I taught in communities, neighborhoods, more schools than you can count because it went viral early on the elementary school website, which was like, oh my God, not another second grade. But it turned out, because I had no idea that it was going to be that. In my mind, it was very romantic, right? You know, truck stops, you know, campgrounds. But it really was awesome teaching all these kids and making me realize how important it is to plant that seed of making in that generation. From there, somebody heard about the trip and asked me to come to Guatemala and teach this village. So I went and taught a village in the jungle how to use tools so they could renovate the only building in the village to use as an ecotourism for missionaries and scientists to earn money for dental care for their village. From there, I got a Wingate for 6 months at SUNY Purchase and did this one person show at the Dolly Mass Gallery. And while I was there, I developed a project called Sanctuary Trailer Project with my friend Jen Muller. And we built this trailer and traveled up and down the East Coast for 3 months, parking and teaching printmaking, book binding, woodworking, animation, and photography. In 2014, I got a Wingate Fellowship at IUP for 6 months, and I became very interested in folk instruments. And so I started doing research on instruments and folk instruments and started learning to make instruments with the intent of teaching children how to make instruments, but fell down a giant rabbit hole that has not quite ended yet. It's part of something I do every day, but with no purpose except to make instruments. During the pandemic, I got really interested. I'm very interested in archaeology. I started making crossbows I put the two slides above for my students. These are bandsaw boxes with turned boxes on them. My van on the right and the little critter that rolls around on the left. And now currently, I've become very interested in community projects and collaborations. So in the upper left is a project I just finished with Gretchen Berger, who's a filmmaker from Washington. And it's called All Things Fall Apart, based on Pema Chodron's book. And it's a piece of furniture that has an 8-minute video of us assembling it and disassembling it in different ways, awkward ways. And it hopefully will soon be at the Museum of Art and Wood in Philadelphia. In the upper right-hand corner is a collaboration I'm doing with my friend, Laura Flavin, a metal artist. We're doing a project called Shrines, Personal Shrines and Reliquaries. The piece in the lower right with the dresses is a piece that we just applied for a grant. It's called Abort, and it's origami dresses made from maps of states that have banned abortion, and then with how many people have died on the back. So we've applied for a grant to make it life-size. And in the lower left is a project I'm working on, you can see on Instagram now, called Use Your Words. So I turn this 5.5-foot pencil and put lead in it, and I travel around, take it with me, and have people write the words that they're feeling that day and then post them on Instagram. So that's what I'm doing. I encourage everybody to really think about taking your studio work out into the community, because I think that's how we're going to change her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth. Thank you, Beth. Next up in our blacksmith shop this week, we welcome Ellen Durkan. And to introduce Ellen is our blacksmith fellow, Andrew Wilton.
Blacksmith.
What did I say?
Hello. It's okay. We just had a lot of fun.
Apologies.
Hi, everybody. So I first became aware of Ellen's work several years ago when a bunch of crusty old men on the internet decided to cancel her because, as one of them said, she was too pornographic. I really appreciate you for being a troublemaker, Ellen. Ellen causes really good trouble. She has stuck her elbows out to make room for herself, but in the process has made room for a lot of other people in blacksmithing who don't fit the mold of big, burly, loud, testosterone dripping man. So thank you, Ellen, for making space and for causing trouble. Everybody welcome Ellen.
Still loud. All right, so I have a quick video. She's going to tell me to shut up when it's time to shut up, and I'm going to talk over the video. I'm going to turn the sound down first. All right. The video is not in any particular order. It's an exhibition that I did before the entire universe imploded. So 2018, 2019. Everyone told me to wait till 2020 to do the show, and I did not do that. So good thing for me. I don't listen to people. The exhibition was a solo exhibition based on the last 15 years of my work. So this shows you all of the metal work and the drawings and everything in one space. And you can also get the scale of the pieces in relationship to each other. So I'm going to talk over this, but it's going to be a little disjointed. So join me on this ADD adventure. I started working in metalwork in graduate school, and I was welding together these structures and putting people inside of them, and they were not very structurally sound. And then sometime during grad school, somebody from another department, the head of jewelry, was like, I think you're trying to do blacksmithing. And I was like, what is blacksmithing? And she was like, well, maybe you should apply to be an assistantship at one of the craft centers. And this was before you could Google things super easily on the internet. So I applied to Peters Valley, and the head of the department down here actually gave me a shot because I submitted all these crazy images of these half wearable structures on mostly naked women. So they were just like, oh, what are we doing here? So they accepted me into the blacksmith shop, and I was here for probably half a summer, and it changed the trajectory of where I thought I was going. when I showed up here, I was like, I'm supposed to be the assistant in this class. This is terrifying because I didn't know how to use any of the pole forges because all we had at school was like a half-ass bleep bleep gas forge. And the first class that I assisted here was a tool making class. So it was like all like a lot of professional male smiths and like power hammers and math. And I was like, I can't do this. And I was like, okay, we're gonna calm down and we're gonna get our shit together and we're gonna be fine. So that's how it started. And this is how it's ending up. So the original pieces started as these wearable stationary dresses that I put nude women inside. So my exhibition for my thesis was, I think like 6 women precariously placed naked in these contraptions with these crazy, like 24-inch cast iron shoes. And there was like no plan in case of an emergency. I was just like, we're going to hit the road and we're going to do the things. And one of my models passed out during my thesis show. So it was very poetic, but everyone thought it was part of the show, but it wasn't. So we were awkwardly dragging this naked woman out because she was sideways, but she didn't die. We're still friends. It's fine. So that's where it started. And then from there, I had these big ideas. I just needed to be able to make them into a reality. So the drawings and everything, I've always done a lot of drawing. I've done a lot of life drawing. I think the drawing and the metalwork play off of each other. I encourage everybody to draw pictures, even if they don't make sense to other people. So these are earlier drawings where you can see there's like a figure kind of emerging from these pod creature things. And then from there, I ended up kind of stripping everything back down to just the figure because all the work was relating to the human body and the figure. For like a long time, if you keep checking yourself as to like what you're interested in throughout the years, there's going to be little hints of things where you're like, oh shit, that started back there. So pay attention to that. And then if you're still kind of recreating it, you're probably kind of like not done with it yet. So pay attention to things that like that pop up or you're not ready to like get rid of yet. Now the music gets a little bit epic. I did the video myself on my iPhone, so this is all shot on my iPhone and edited on my iPhone, so I'm not a videographer. So you're just gonna have to wait. No, we can deal with this, it's fine. So these are the wearable pieces. All right, there we go. Gets a little dramatic in there, but that's my fault because I don't know how to do video editing. But I tried. So the original pieces were wearable stationary dress cages for better or for worse. And then I started making them in separate pieces. So all of these newer pieces that people see, they're built in separate sections and then they can be kind of mixed and matched together. But when I design them as like one unit. So I'll build the skirt, I'll build like a corset piece, and then maybe I'll be like, oh, I'm not done with it. It needs to be a little bit more extra. Maybe it needs a big old headpiece or something. So once I started building these in separates, it made it a lot more diverse and like what I could do with it. So I started doing performance runway shows, but not runway shows to sell things. So I ended up in like a weird place where I was trying to do runway shows that were like regular people runway shows where it's like, hey, buy my stuff. And I was like, but I'm not trying to sell you anything. So I did that. So that's my root of my problems is I'm like, I'm not trying to sell you anything. So I did a lot of different runway shows and like groups and stuff. And then I was like, that's not what I want to do. So I leaned towards doing more performative stuff. Some of those drawings that you see on the wall, I think we get a close up now. So those are earlier pieces that it's my Trash Monster series. This was happening right before I kind of started doing the wearable art. So I glued together a lot of trash that was in my studio instead of throwing it out like a sane person, and then I made drawings of it. I liked the detail and I liked working from observation. So those are trash that I glued together. And then I made tiny drawings of the trash, and then I made big drawings of the trash. And that's a series of work that was right before the metal dresses, and I think it's good for people to see where you came from, where you ended up, because nothing in life is linear, and anyone that tells you that it's linear is living a different life. So this is a run through of the exhibition. I have some slides I can really quickly go through. So I like to work tiny, I like to work big, I like to work on the really big drawings. You can see on the right-hand side is one of the original death dresses that I tried to kill somebody in. I did rebuild that a few times. But now I've retired it to my parents' attic and it can live there forever and ever. So I work with a lot of different techniques in my work. This is a video I put together for a face piece that I made. There's a longer video later if I talk fast. So I like to work in a lot of different mediums, and I'll stick around course and then we'll go through some pictures real fast. So I'm a little spicy here. So this is the original pieces that I had in my pieces show. A lot of mixed media, copper, leather, wood. That's the first piece I did on copper on the left. It's a little psychotic. You should probably start with a ring, not that. Those shoes are copper and brass and carved wood. And the lacing, I believe, is brass. I sent those down the runway a few times. They broke, RIP, they're fine. Those also live somewhere at my parents' house. Pieces. I have a photographer that is amazing and works with me, and we will click through things. That's the face piece. I didn't bring that baby with me, but there's a bunch of other pieces down at the shop if you want to see other things. That's the video. Oh, wait, that got a little loud. All right, we'll skip the video. We have 1 minute. I got 2 minutes. I got so much time. Click back. So this is a series I did with my friend Jess when she had breast cancer. So we documented her series through my artwork. And that's her again on the runway. And I did a collaborative piece with a friend of mine that does felt and fabric. Shanna, she taught here last year. So we combined our pieces. I thought it would be cool to do a show with women of all ages. So our models were from the ages of 14 to 72. That's our oldest model. She thought I was joking when I asked her to model for me. When I called her up, she laughed at me and I was like, no, please do it. And then she called me back a few minutes later and was like, okay. So she didn't know what she was getting into, but she hit the runway and she was like, kept the thing on all night long. And then I wanted to do a pregnant belly piece. One of my models was having a baby, so I built a piece for her. And then we shot things underwater. I shot metal underwater. I don't swim much. I get in water to do things that possibly can kill me. So from this piece, I designed a copper neck piece that can also go underwater. So I like to do collaborative stuff with other people. So my photographer is amazing. Find people that like make sense with you and what you're doing, but can like step up your work to a different level. Everyone has their own skills. Find people to collaborate with. I think that's important. Say no to people that you don't want to collaborate with. But you know, you got to find your people. So that's us drowning underwater again. And this is one of the most recent shoots. We shot this the other week. I collaborated with a friend of mine that does flowers and stuff. And we combined them with my new Luna moth piece. So I think that's my last image. Did we do it? Ooh, if you want to know more, you can go see later.
All right. Thank you, Ellen. Next up in our printmaking studio this weekend, we have Ella Desmond teaching. And so we'll introduce Ella as our 2D special topics photography fellow, Lindsay Davis.
Hello. So Ella Desmond received an MFA in printmaking from Pratt in 2017, BFA in printmaking from Louisiana State University in 2013. Her interdisciplinary studio practice spans performance, poetry, and a range of printmaking mediums such as relief, lithography, screen printing, and letterpress. Ella has been a faculty member at the Parsons School of Design since 2019, where she teaches courses in printmaking and book arts. She is currently working on a series of prints exploring the intersection between tragedy, comedy, and the service industry. Ella lives and works in Brooklyn and Newborough, New York. Please welcome Ella. Yay!
Hi, nice to see you guys. I'm Ella. It's so nice to have a slide just like waiting for me. Okay, great. So I am a printmaker and a performer. And this is a picture of some plants from where I grew up in Louisiana. I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and my parents were both architects, both architects, architecture historian, and also an interior designer. My brother's a mathematician, so I always say that our skills got split between us. And it's just really nice to have that combination of things in our family. Okay. Yeah, so this is from our garden. And I went to undergrad at LSU in Louisiana, and it's a really small program, but I was able to really experiment and fall in love with printmaking. I discovered letterpress, which no one I know learns anymore. And I became obsessed with doing handset movable type and wood type. And so every piece of lettering you see in this collage is handset. And I would create my own languages and use gibberish and nonsensical things, and overlay prints over and over and over again until they became just like abstract forms. Originally, I started trying to imitate a painting that I had made when I was studying in Oregon. And so through that process of trying to imitate it, I discovered how much I really connected to the medium of printmaking. So this is a piece that actually has several editions of it. It's a collage of several pieces of paper. And so I have a copy of like 4 of these. And it is called Answers. And it was in the BFA show in 2013 called Ambiguous Ordinary. So that's kind of a summary of my undergraduate work and my broad interest in that. And then I went to graduate school, and of course I was working during grad school because it's so darn expensive, and I was a caterer. It's nice to say was a caterer. It's been a really long journey being in the service industry, and it's very, very close to my heart, and also there's a lot of problems with it. And so that became a subject matter for my graduate school work. I was able to move away from printmaking a little bit and move a little bit towards trying to focus on a concept. And of course, in grad school, they pushed me towards performance, which I feel like happens a lot. And turns out I did a lot of performing when I was a kid. I did theater and visual art and choir, and it was really nice to return back to that a little bit. And after I graduated from grad school, I was able to kind of focus a little bit more on that too. So these are some images I took while I was catering. I have so many. The one with the red uniforms is in Louisiana at a place called Boudreaux's. The slogan for that place is invitation to elegance, and it's gross. But yeah, fond memories. And then I also worked for a company in New York City called Cipriani, and I would sometimes document things there, people on their phones, stuff like that. Trying to get a sense of the visuals of waiting around for something to happen, the mundanity of the job, that kind of stuff. So my thesis show was based around those experiences, and it was called You in Mind. And I hired a friend of mine who was a server to serve ribs at my thesis show. And there's also a trellis of cheese balls. The goal for me at this particular show was to serve food that you really had to get your hands dirty with, and that you would never want to have near like precious art. You can also see in here that there's a camera on a tripod. And so that was sending a live stream video into a room behind where that was happening. And so as people came in, got a little snack, talked to my server friend, Carrie Widmer, who was really hamming it up for everyone, trying to really make people like her, trying to make them feel welcome. You could go into the next room and see the next person coming up and kind of think, oh, I wonder what I look like a little bit. So then I graduated and I got to go back to printmaking, which is great. Super, super wonderful. And it was really nice to be able to take that time and focus on concept and performance and video and things like that. But then to go back to something that I had invested so much time in, woodcut, lithography on stones, letterpress, it just was really, really nice. And then I was able to get a job working as a technician at Parsons. And that allowed me time to focus on making art again because I had the equipment. So, you know, we are always looking for the studio space, right? So this is a color reduction woodcut. It is called Sometimes Exchanged Dialogue With, and it is pretty small. It's an edition of 22. And if you're not familiar with color reduction, it is a multi-layer print made from the same block of wood. So in this print, I use Sheena plywood, which I really like carving out of. And I would print the first layer and then carve into it, print it again, and then continue to carve until I had the little red spots in here. And then after that, there's nothing. So you can't really go back. You have to have lots of extras for messing up in, but this is based on a cafe scene and also bringing in some words and poetry. This is another example. This is a lino cut. It is also color reduction, very small. And I was taking inspiration from advertising from 1890s in France, where the lithographs are really famous during that period, and when, you know, a lot of modern art, like modernity, is sort of birthed in that era in a way, and trying to poke a little fun at it, take a little bit for myself, and then also alluding to like Mardi Gras culture from Louisiana and New Orleans. And I couldn't help myself, there's a little bit of illegible text that doesn't really mean anything, but it kind of looks like writing. So the term for that is called asemic writing. And then this is me as a performer, as a little clown. So I thought I'd just throw that in because, you know, you can see the roots there. Cool. More recently, this is a very small little 3-layer lithograph. And again, I'm pulling from multiple sources of Toulouse-Lautrec, and then also creating my own sort of abstract drawings, this little figure, ghost, feeling person. And then the title for this, which is listed at the bottom of the print, you can see, it's called Ask My Manager If I Am Unsure How to Handle an Information Request. And that's an edition of 22, and it's about 5 by 7 inches. And then I also started practicing a form of silkscreen printing called CMYK printing, which is a 4-color separation. And I thought to myself, what would be the most commercially unviable thing in my mind to print? And that would be a photograph of something that's already printed in a book. That's got the gutter in it, the shadows from the light, the stuff from the background. So unfortunately, this series doesn't translate super well to the screen digitally because it is a digital image that's been printed. So it's I should have brought some to show you guys. But I call them faux Seurat prints. So Georges Seurat, who did like the stippling and stuff, when you get up close, it sort of breaks down and is really orderly and things like that. Cool. We're going. This one is called I Met Her Socially. This is another example. This is a larger series I have. The check-in was designed to be simple. And then this one is called Your Manager Will Work With You to Develop Your Full Potential. And these came from all the photographs came from a book of female impressionist painters in Paris at the turn of the 20th century. And then this is an example of just a test print that I was doing in a similar vein, but it's a photograph of a black and white index in the back of a book about printmaking about Andy Warhol. It's called Starting from the End. Then I discovered papermaking, so I'll just kind of go through these real quick, but I learned how to cast paper. So I've been taking glass plates from thrift stores that have like flowers on them, or, you know, it's the back of it that's really textured, not the side you put your food on. And so I've been laying wet sheets of paper pulp on those, and then you let it dry, and then you can pull it off. And it really holds this texture really beautifully. And these I kind of called napkins. They allude to my time in catering in the SANIT department, which stands for sanitation, and that's where everyone throws their food away. And it's really gross. But these are some new ones that I'm working on for a show in Newburgh, the Terrain Biennial.
some more examples. They're really fun. And then these are some of the plates. And this is a little casting setup that I have. So it's really simple and accessible for me to do at the studio. This is a Newburgh. And then I can't leave without giving some props to the cats in my life. Linda and Marvin. But yeah, thank you guys. Yeah.
Thanks, Ella. Okay, our next speaker in the ceramics studio this week, we welcome back David Stuempfle. He's teaching firing the anagama. And to introduce David is our ceramics assistant, one of our ceramics assistants, Persis Wade.
Hello. Yes, hello. David is from the land of Seagrove, and today I learned that he really likes to listen to Art Tatum, and he likes to get very close to deer to see how far he can get close to deer. He came a little while ago for the big pot workshop, and it was then where I realized I needed a godfather potter in my life, and he was the one I always needed. He is extremely charismatic and humble and very, very wonderful person, very good teacher, really pushed us all to take risks and to develop new work. And I'm really excited that he's back. So here he is, Mr. David.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. Yeah, I'm Dave Stuempfle. I'm teaching in the ceramic studio this week. We're firing the anagama kiln here. And so I'd like to welcome all of you to come for a visit at some point during the week. As she mentioned, I was just here a couple of weeks ago and had a great time, got real tired. Was really happy to get home. And after a couple of days, I was like, man, I want to go back to that place. And so it is nice to be back. There's a certain energy about a place where everybody comes together to try new things and learn. And I think you all have that in spades here. So it's a really good place. I also come from a community of makers. I live in a small rural town in the middle of North Carolina called Seagrove, North Carolina. It's really just in the middle of nowhere. There's only about 200 people that live there. But there's about 100 working potters that live in this place within maybe a 10 or 15 square mile radius. People always ask, why are all these potters here? And it's because this part of North Carolina is known for its great clay. We're right along the fall line on the East Coast where the Piedmont Plateau falls to the coastal plain. So this area is really known for its ceramic resources. These are some friends of mine out in the woods. We're actually digging clay. Native Americans were the first to discover this natural resource, and they've made beautiful pots for about 3,000 years now. In the 18th century, immigrant potters came and have made a wide variety of work for ever since. In the 1960s and 70s, studio trained potters came into the area, and now the scene is sort of a mix of all these different influences. But it all goes back to the clay, and using this raw local clay is a way for me to connect with my environment and to its history and to its culture in a very personal, very physical kind of way. The other natural resource I use a lot are trees. I spend probably 10 or 15% of my time preparing wood for my kilns. All my kilns are fueled with firewood. The pile of wood you see here represents maybe half of what it takes to do a 5-day burn. I use both hardwood and pine wood. This past year, I had a tree fall on my studio, destroying part of the building. So my relationship with trees is sort of changing, evolving, becoming more complex. It was a reminder that as much as we like to court Mother Nature in our work, sometimes it doesn't love us back. It just reacts to how we treat it. And in my case, I didn't treat it very well. I built my buildings too close to the edge of the forest, and I didn't cut down the trees in a responsible way. So it was a tough lesson to learn. Yeah, I think the subject of materials is an appropriate one for a craft school. And, you know, how we source our materials, how we use them, our ideas about different meanings that material have. Take all these things together, I think it's what I call material intelligence. And I think it's something that we should all think about, regardless of what medium we're working in. So after I've done all the prep work, I get to go inside and make pottery. This is a stand-up treadle wheel that I use to make my small pots on. I really like the sensitivity that this kick wheel gives me. The bigger pots are made with coils of clay that I build up gradually and then paddle with a paddle and an anvil and get shaped to the final form. Some of them are large for outside in gardens and larger buildings. In recent years, I've been working on some of these hand-built forms. This is a new challenge for me. I really like the way it's made me slow down and think about clay and design in a different kind of way. This is my kiln yard. The kiln in the foregrounds, the original kiln is based on our local kiln design in North Carolina we call groundhog kiln. The kiln in the background, it's more similar to the kiln that we're using here at Peters Valley, and it's based on my experiences working in Japan and Korea. Here's a picture of loading the kiln. It takes about 4 days to load these kilns. Both these kilns are about 30 feet long, 6 feet tall, 6 feet wide. So the loading of the kiln is a really crucial part of the process and determines the final outcome of the work in many ways. This is firing the kiln, stoking the front of the kiln. Yeah, I only do this a couple times a year. So it's, 6 months of my income's in the kiln. So it's a sort of a stressful thing. It's not a party atmosphere. It's something we take really seriously. This is side stoking the kiln, where you put small pieces of wood in the holes that run down the length of the kiln, and this raises the temperature further back in the chamber and stabilizes the atmosphere here throughout the kiln. This is my partner, Nancy Katovi. We've shared life and fire for 31 years now together. This is what the front of the kiln looks like after it cools for about a week. Some people say it must be like Christmas. Oftentimes it's more like Halloween, depending upon the fire. Perhaps the most apt holiday analogy is Easter, where earth and water is transformed by fire and air. These are just some of the finished pots out of the kiln. I only fire the kiln twice a year, so the learning curve has been sort of slow, but I do learn something new each time. This is some of the work, the finished work. So this, I hope, gives you an idea of where I'm coming from. I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, so this is the last picture, and these dishes just came out of the kiln a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, potters are deeply connected to food and the people that make it, the people that serve it, and the people that eat it. That's all of us. So I hope this photo, to me, it represents hopefully an invitation to share a meal with some of you. So thanks.
Thank you, David. Our next and final speaker for this evening in the Fine Metals Studio, we have Erin Decker teaching, and to introduce Erin is our Fine Metals assistant, Cam Netkin.
Hello. Erin is an incredibly talented enamelist, artist, and writer joining us from Detroit, Michigan. Something I've observed and that I really admire about Erin from just one day of working with him in class is that in a field that has a lot of people holding their cards close to their chest and claiming trade secrets, he's just like totally put it all out there. He opened his personal sketchbook to show us his process from start to finish, taught us all his tips and tricks and cheats. And I'm still not entirely sure if it's because he's an incredibly passionate educator or if he knows that he can show us all his tricks and we still won't come close. So to show you what I mean, please join me in welcoming Erin.
All right, we're gonna jump right into it. My name's Erin Decker, he, him, his. I'm a queer boy, artist, enamelist, and jeweler. I'm not even on the screen. So I'm gonna take a minute and let you read this quote. I read this quote a month after graduating from my grad program as a craft artist, and this really impacted me. I took 2 years off from my practice. I had a solo show right after I graduated my grad program. I read this book, read this paragraph through this book, took 2 years off, and just decided to stop from it and figure out why I was doing it. After that 2 years, I came to enameling sort of happenstance. It was something I wasn't formally trained in. I had one class in undergrad from it, but it was something that I really loved. I loved color. I loved the process of enameling. If none of you know enameling, it's incredibly tedious. It's also an incredibly conservative medium. It's steeped in a lot of tradition and a lot of very cisgendered white people taking all that and making it theirs. So I decided to take it and mess around with it. So these pieces are from a series of work that's titled Glass Cannon. And if any of you play video games or know of that term, a glass cannon is something that shoots really, really hard, but the minute you try and hit it back, it just cracks and shatters into pieces. That's my thinking of what masculinity is, of what sort of these ideas of masculinity that I grew up with. So I decided to apply that thinking to enamel and just ruin it. So a lot of these techniques on this are the wrong way to do things. There's a lot of burnt edges. There's a lot of colors mixing. I took copper tubing and just covered it in enamel. None of it's fired perfectly. It's pretty terrible. It chips, it breaks. I actually got a photo the other day of one of my clients wearing this necklace on the left. It was quite great to see it, and she said the wings broke off again, so we have to fix it. This is also my first time in drag. My sister did this to me, so clap for her. My childhood was steeped in a lot of military. Safe to say I had a painful childhood. And this work allowed me to sort of process it. So what came into this work was this clown figure, these stripes, these military badges. I grew up on military bases, about 18 before I was 15. Squished forms, those sort of badges that have these colored stripes on them, messing with them, basically smashing penises together with color, turning it into a brooch. So this body of work really was about me, both processing what I had gone through when I was a kid, but also processing the fact that this craft I really wanted to do, this medium I really wanted, was also very steeped in a hierarchy of what is good and what is not good, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. This is my answer to that for myself. I also wrote this on my studio wall, just because I needed something to be a little bit less serious about this medium. This is what my studio looks like right now. I work underneath a microscope for most of the time. So even though my work is incredibly ugly or very childlike or has this sort of feel that a child made the object, there's incredible skill that goes into making it, which is a funny contrast to it, a skill that I really enjoy. I also really enjoy a microscope because it allows me to escape into my work. So when I'm actually making my work, this is what I see. So these are tiny shards of glass with bubbles in the water. This is it fired and sort of what it looks like at a microscopic scale. So often I won't really look at my work until it's completely finished. I'll mostly look at my work this way, and it sort of gives me emotional distance by getting directly up close and looking at surface. I'm happy to say I picked that book back up. Oh, no. This is an aside. So one of the things I like to do whenever I do a lecture is have a bit of radical transparency around what being an artist is. I am a full-time executive director of design for a luxury company in watches, as well as a full-time studio artist. So I do both and I wear both hats, and this is sort of like a day in my life. We did this today. If you couldn't tell, this was during the pandemic. I had very long hair and a very long beard. I did not care how I looked. I like to show people that video or just talk about being a full-time worker and artist because I think it's really important for younger artists to know that you will go to grad school, and if you do, you might have some student loans. The reality of it is that you're going to work really, really hard every day, and still you have to make time for your studio practice if you want it. It is about sacrifice, and that's sort of like the hard part, but it's also very fun, and I get to do this on my PTO, which is amazing. The best way to spend my time. And I'm happy to say I picked up that book and read the next paragraph that came after. I've shown these slides, these two slides, the first paragraph and the second paragraph at a couple of different talks. The first talk I did this at, that first slide went viral on Facebook. It was fantastic because someone had sent me it through another person, and it was like 170 comments being like, this artist is just crap. Like, I cannot believe they invited this person. I was like, this is amazing. I love this. So after that body of work, for my recent solo show in, I think it was 2019, it was during the pandemic, I decided to do a body of work that was titled, It's Not All Fun and Games. 2 minutes, great. This body of work really centered on my belief that as a queer person, we're made up of pieces and parts. And if you think of yourself as all the things that you wear, how you present yourself, how I look like a designer right now, pieces come apart. And sometimes you're a monster to someone else, and sometimes that monster is just made up of a bunch of pieces of a person. So these are called parures. So this is a brooch and a necklace that go together and completely articulate. This is another one. So it's 4 pieces, 2 keychains, because I also think it's very funny to make a very expensive enameled keychain. And this is also a clown face. So when I was younger, my father compared me to John Wayne Gacy when I came out, which is pretty traumatic. So I actually internalized that and used it against him in this body of work. So I was the clown. And then this is a little bomb. There's also a locket. And when we took this photo, I didn't imagine that would happen, but it's a question mark. The image of a clown at the bottom is the shadow. And it was like one of those moments in your studio where you're like, oh, that's it. I couldn't even make this up. This is what happened. It's perfect. This was the exhibition. So I basically took these tables that were sort of like kid-sized tables and put them onto the wall. So when you were looking at the exhibition from across the room, you were looking down at my childhood room, seeing toys strewn across the room. And then that turned into my very favorite pieces I've ever made, are called low bombs. So these are based off of koosh balls, little Pokemon and Tamagotchi toys turned into brooches. So they're all lockets that open up and hang on your body like little clowns. And then you'll notice my insignia is a tank exploding, shooting off. It's very much a penis in this case, represented by a tank. The clown and gesture come back in. Those beach balls mixed with those hats that we always see in those movies about childhood, but none of us have ever really owned one of those hats. These archetypes, I really love the idea of these archetypes that keep on popping up. A koosh ball. Like, who gave kids a dog toy? That's what that is. So I made a very expensive koosh ball. This is the scale of them, so they're quite small. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Okay. You guys did amazing. Thank you so much to our instructors that spoke this evening. It's never easy. Everyone who has experienced public speaking knows, no matter how many times you come up here, it's always scary to talk about yourself. So thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. I hope you all have a lovely weekend. Enjoy your workshops. And if you need anything, the gallery's open 10 to 6. If you need any extra towels, anything, you can go there. Otherwise, have a lovely evening.